any racists in this time that we face this, because if I have to deal with this another season, go ahead and put me on the slave ship. So I can go back to the land of my origination, performative label, sharpen the scalpel. It's time for the debate, decapitation. See, it has come to my attention, debate is fight against the isms. There's so many sides, just like a predicament must be handled with precision. What do I mean by an ism? Him, her, this is who we are, what we do affect the judge's last decision. See, there's racism, sexism, and boys and girls a little lessism, gayism, tieism, where's your student gayism, biasm, where's your student tieism, classism, religionism, because I live in the city system, this ism, that ism, I'm sick of all of that. Isn't it enough that I just stand on these 2 feet, say what I feel inside my heart, deny my eyes of defeat? I hope it is, cuz I am an racist in this time that we face this, and I have to deal with this another season. Go ahead and put me on a slave ship. Now, we can look up at the line by line, then we can poke in 30 seconds of what we say in 9 minutes time. All that we ask is you evaluate us in a holistic fashion, prove your agree, sign the ballot justice. All that we're asking. See, lately how it's been, we've been pretty accepting, but I'm about to get to your head like my name was etc. See, status quo has got to go. I know it's hard to believe, but the traditional has to be fictional, and this goal that we're trying to achieve. The only way to make our changes so we counter hegemonic, we go in and shake things up just like debate with play tectonics. Y'all don't even understand. Welcome to the lecture, honey. Performance is not status quo debate. Performance necessitates that we break the traditions of status quo debate. How many of people thought that was tight? Cool. That's what's up. But how many people also thought that was very argumentative? That's the point, right? Debate always seeks to just speak, right? How we understand argumentation theory, right? The tool, men, or the classical understanding of argumentation, which is plain more than impact, right? Those things just stay there, right? They just exist. But this is new school. We gotta make that stuff move, right? It's not just about what arguments are, it's about how arguments move. You feel me? Okay, so y'all knew, so I have to tell y'all that I like to talk to people, so when I say y'all feel me, y'all gotta be like, yeah, I feel you, I got you. You know what I'm saying? Talk to me, let me know, you with me. Okay? So, we need a more theoretical understanding about what performance is, but how the heck can we get theoretical about performance? Because performance is always tied to moving objects, it always has to be tied to a subject, so it's a performance of the flesh, it's a performance of the body, right? In this particular context. So, politics has to be emotion. We have methodologies, then we have performance. Methodologies is the why, we all know that, right? How you do something, the way you do it, sorry, the why, the way you do something. We are familiar with those, right? But how do you do it? What is the do part, right? And performance is kind of tricky because when we talk about performance, we are kind of talking about the present, but every time we speak about the present, it's automatically in the past. Oh my God, let's break that down. When we talk about performance, we can't ever be talking about it, or can we? Because when we talk about performance, at that second, the moment of utterance, we're talking about the past. Something that's already happening. Or does performance just exist in a particular moment? Can performances stretch past? What is a moment? Right. What is a moment? It could be a hot set. It could be some decades. Right? It could be what's trending right now. Performance speaks to it all. Performance speaks to bodily enactment of politics. Y'all with me so far? What do I mean when I say bodily enactment of politics? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was thinking, well, bodily means you're using your body, your own, to make the argument, the politics.
So what are some ways in which this can happen?
Well, you just, I'm guessing a poem at the top, like the speech. So.
Was it just the poem? Because the poem, I can go like get a Microsoft Word document.
Yeah, you were
like,
moving
here
around.
you go, you know.
It was a combination of a lot of things. You were moving around, the way you were enunciating the speech, the actual words of the poem.
Right.
You can also think beyond that. You can
what you just said? Oh my God. Performance happens no matter what. Right? Check me on my spelling, y'all. I did not do so well in that subject in school. I got it. Okay. Performance is inevitable, so bodies do move. So there, you and me tell me there's a clear difference between what performance is and what speech act is. Is that what you was trying to say as well? Not really. Kind of stuff. Nah, you wasn't even on that. You weren't even on that. Anybody can tell me, or is there a difference between a speech act and a performance?
I think speech acts are included within performances, right? So every performance can be a speech act.
But not every speech act is a performance?
Okay, well, talk to me a little bit more about these characteristics.
I think a performance society is it would be an more from who you are and how you would inject yourself in the speech act, where the speech act itself would just be something policy or what
Okay, we like to use the words and the definitions.
Because I feel so like if you were to take in the rap that you just did and some, like you were just like basically just reading it, like that would be classified as a speech act. But the way in which you did it turned it into a performance.
But I feel like, I don't know the distinction still though, because you can read it normally, or you can rap it, and it's still a performance. It's just two different kinds of performance.
But I think it's the stylistic aspect that makes it into a performance, not just reading it itself.
Or like, what's not stylistic
Or
about
are
someone
they
spreading
just like
up the
different
180?
types of performance or like
Monotone.
different, how you call it, your person, like it makes it into like a different type of performance, but still
But
a
yeah,
subset
different.
of performance.
You can argue that everything is a performance. You could. Right. But what neatly separates performances from speech acts is that the body itself is an active part of performance. But it's not, speech acts are not dependent on bodies.
anyone can make the same
Right.
speech act.
And what I'm saying is that the body is literally part of the argument. Right? So what he was getting at is the team stands up and just talks about global warming, what the United States federal government should do. It is up to, it's a fair game for you to be like, that's not performance because your body is not intricately tied to it. Now they may respond and be like, screw you, I spent my whole life researching this issue and it was very important to me. Maybe so, but I'd be willing to have a debate with them about it because at that instance, at the moment in time that you called the performance of the 1AC, your body, who you were, your social location was not intricately tied to it. How would I know? It's because I would have known because it was your body. I would have got a little bit more view from it. You feel me? Speech acts are able to be interpreted, but performances can only be interpolated. You can only try to change what I had did and made it something else. Speech acts are easily just interpreted. You would do that with like literary criticism. Right? Now let's get into a little bit more distinction between rhetoric and literature. Because literature requires that you just assess the situation, whereas rhetoric uses the basic means of persuasion. Y'all want me to break this down for y'all? Okay. Rhetoric uses the available means of persuasion to do what? To persuade an audience? Yeah. Is that the end point of rhetoric? What? Absolutely. It's often mistaken in the academy and debate that we use rhetoric, we use our words, we use our language, we use the available means of persuasion to get people to do stuff. Not really, right? Because we don't ever get people to do stuff, right? Based on our rhetoric and our available means of persuasion, we provide them with the opportunity to render judgment. They decide whether or not they do stuff, right? Which brings us back to the importance of bodies when it comes to performances, right? We can debunk the traditional example that's used, like putting a gun to somebody's head. Just because you put a gun to somebody's head doesn't make them do anything. They decide that, oh, my life is way more important, so I should do whatever it is that they say. Right? Bodies control themselves. That's the importance of autonomy. That's the difference between performance with the three-tier methodology. Can somebody tell me what the three-tier methodology is?
Organic intellectuals, personal experience, and scholarly knowledge.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure y'all know this lingo just right, okay? So, it was not personal experience. Personal experience is what they got here. Okay? And as we go through this, you would see that all of these tiers are just remixes of Aristotle's proofs. What do I mean by Aristotle's proofs? He talked about logos, ethos, pathos, right? He said that all three must be present to create the most effective form of persuasion to enable someone to do what? Say it louder.
Render judgment.
Yes, absolutely. Okay? So, Louisville's like, the traditional style of debate just mandates and is overly determined just based on logos. We need the other things in there. So we need to have personal narratives, right? We need to have logos. We call that traditional intellectual. And we need to have what's last one? All right. Okay, what is a personal narrative? Sure. Something that they have to do. Right? It's personal. Right, got that part. What's the narrative? Yes. It's a personal account of something. Right? A personal account. Why do they think that personal narratives were important to debate? Personal account of history. That's absolutely right. But why do we need personal narratives? Why do we need that in debate?
Maybe because we talk about everything in the abstract, but we need to connect the theory to the flesh, which is, I don't know.
Okay. So how do personal narratives do that? Right. Connection is a good word. Y'all are in my lab. I told y'all to stay quiet during this portion. We talk about this.
Like, it would establish like an emotional connection
Sure. Emotional connection to what?
to like the audience because they
Is
know.
that the thing? Because remember, the three-tier methodology is birthed out of debate being exclusionary to minority students. Right? And so their argument was that people don't feel interested and motivated at all to even be a part of these discussions, let alone be successful while they're there. Those who do so against the odds. Right? So you're right in the sense that it was developed to create connection, but it was not to the audience or to the judge necessarily. It was so the students themselves have a means by which they can relate to the topic of discussion. This is backed by the Gregory and Al-Muhammad study, shows that it is a powerful tool to get a more diverse populations of debaters into debates. Because it gave them something to latch on to. That was the connection between the debater and the resolution. Okay? Got that? So, traditional intellectuals do what? What do we use scholars for? What do we use traditional intellectuals? Huh?
Logos.
No.
Well, sure.
Ethos.
Sure, but what is the purpose of using traditional intellectuals to establish logos? There's something that we need from argument in order to make it all effective.
Evidence? Warrants?
They do the majority of the research so that we can make our
Research, I like that word. What does research get us?
vast amounts of information so that
Facts and empirics, which help us to create
truth
a
claims.
preliminary theory. Traditional intellectuals provide a theoretical framework for our struggles. Does this make sense? Right, we need to be able to theorize how power works. in the context of our personal narratives, right? We need to theorize how power works when I say that I'm excluded by an all-white group of students, right? We have to have a theory about how that works, right? In order to have an academic conversation about it. So they say. Organic intellectuals. What is an organic intellectual?
They're just everyday people that think about the things that happen in our world and say what they think.
You did that with personal narrative, didn't you?
Yeah, but it's someone that agrees with me,
Really?
or maybe disagrees. But I think another person from like a similar perspective.
Good. That's suitable. Organic intellectuals are members who rise up from the agreed communities themselves, who can tell it like it is, but also be able to speak in a grammar in which those others can't or are not seen to, right? Organic intellectuals was almost the mediator between what is the distinct personal experience of a debater and their scholarship. Right? It's how we bring scholarship to the hood. It's how we bring hood to the scholarship. Organic intellectuals have the grammar in which we can articulate to all those parties. Right? We establish our pathos with personal narratives. We get our logos through traditional intellectuals, and we build our credibility, our ethos off of organic intellectuals who can speak to all parties. Make sense? Any questions about that? Sorry, I kind of want to move to this real quick. Move to old school stuff. But students like me found that even the three-tier methodology was inaccessible to some degree, right? Because it required that every single debate include a personal narrative, which is a personal account of history, like a segment of which you gotta spill the beans about yourself to someone else almost, right? Traditional intellectuals and organic intellectuals that just could be chosen. Right. A lot of people could argue that Clarence Thomas, everybody knows who that is, that Clarence Thomas could be an organic intellectual. Sure, he could be for somebody, but he wasn't for me. Because he could not speak the language of me. You understand that? Okay. So we was like, okay, we gotta come up with something. I like this, ethos, logos, and pathos thing that obviously works, but how is it, can we make a framework by which to engage debate, engage argumentation, engage people that is not so reliant upon normalization? Well, we tried, and this is what we came up with. Instead of having just personal narratives, we think that we should speak from our social location. What do I mean when I say speak from your social location?
I think it's talking not so much about you as the person, but instead about people similar to you that are going through a struggle that certain people are facing.
Almost, but not really.
Your perspective, because you're different from anyone else on a certain issue. So like even if you aren't like a black woman who goes through a certain struggle, you still have a view of that from where you are. So like your opinion.
Sure, I like the way where you're going with that a little bit. Okay, so social location requires that we talk about things from a place in which our life of work has situated us, right? We often hear this thing was like speaking from nowhere, right? You're just talking about stuff. Just literally speaking from nowhere to where you are not present. But we don't think that that's productive. We think that it's important to speak from your specific social location, which means, giving some credence to who you are, where you're thrown into the world, what you have to do, right? So in the context of debaters, yeah, you might want to talk about the debate space. You might want to talk about some of the demographic information, your identity of how you can speak on the issue. Because I don't know, I'm not comfortable with just white men standing up talking about black women. And there's black women just not comfortable with me standing up here just talking about black women. Without talking about what in my social location connects me to that particular struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Does that still require a personal narrative?
No. It can be a personal narrative as a way to speak from your social location, but as I was explaining to him earlier, a person might talk about how their social location inspired them to create a 1AC. Right? However, there's a debate about whether or not that relationship that you have with X thing should be present in 1AC. Because I can argue that sure, your 1AC did motivate you to participate in it, but we didn't know. How will we know? How were we able to get the credibility of the 1AC, the person who stood up and deployed the argument? Right, you now tell me in the 2AC and the latter speeches in the debate that you somehow or another have a very personal connection to this particular thing, but why wasn't that present in the original presentation of the argument? Becomes the better question. Feel me? Cool. We're gonna move on. So, traditional intellectuals was like, okay, who can provide theory though? They're supposed to provide a theoretical framework for our real world struggles, but only people in the Eiffel Tower can theorize? Really? Like, really? For real, for real? Like, no. We think that it's important not to just have traditional intellectuals, right? But we need to challenge what we think about as the traditions, right? For me, the Louisville Project, the 3-tier methodology, is part of my tradition of debate. Very much tied to my tradition of debate. So it was important for me to call into question how people, ironically, traditionally, use the word traditional. I needed to problematize all of that. Right? So I was like, nah, we probably should need scholars. What makes you a scholar? There's a couple people I know who I would argue got masters in hoodology, PhDs in gangstology. You know what I'm saying? Tupac theorized about a lot of stuff. My mama theorized about a lot of stuff. You feel what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Is that, so yes, you should have a theoretical framework, but to normalize who can theorize serves you no purpose. Because if it's supposed to really be about students' experiences and their perspectives and their identities and their culture, then by the very definition of intellect, they just making people get paid to sit in their office. Because some of the things that we're talking about, they can't possibly theorize about because you've never experienced it. Sitting up in your hotel room looking down on those who are participating in the struggle is not theory, in my book. Because you don't have any examples in which you can draw that theorization from. Feel me? Right, so we have scholars that provide theoretical frameworks for our struggles. And so those scholars could be things like what I said, my mom is
I guess, like, what about those scholars who, like, are famous law officers that are getting paid, but also have, like, real world means to go, like, motor
sure they can. They can be scholars. But they're not those can't be the only thing that we think of as scholars. Right, because Wilderson, for instance, and I'm glad you mentioned his damn name, he theorizes about a lot, but what he did not theorize about was this black body. I don't know what black body he was talking about, but this one, probably not. You feel me on that? And so this is why we can always launch criticisms, even against the academy, about what they consider as traditional or intellect, or what they even think it means to theorize. Can normalize those discussions. Right? Any more questions? That was a very good question. Yeah, Darren.
With this more open view of scholar, doesn't this start to blur the line between organic intellectual and traditional intellectual?
If you're using them to provide a theoretical framework for your struggle, then there's a clear difference. Right? It's a question of what is the use of that particular person at that given point in time. Remember, we were talking about points. think that organic intellectuals is cool. We can use that terminology. But in order to kind of help create a difference between A and B, we need to do, I think that organic intellectuals got some responsibilities. Right? What are those responsibilities? All right. No. What do you think a person who is supposed to be able to talk the talk while walking the walk, what are their responsibilities? I don't think that they just should be free of charge. What about you?
They have to make sure they're that they maintain their roots. Like they have to stay.
Okay, I'm gonna break that down. You said maintain their roots, so they're rooted in a particular community, right? That's the first responsibility I think that they have, because you can't be an organic intellectual and you're not even from the agreed community, right? You gotta be from there. You're not about that life. Spell check it. But you gotta be from the agreed community, right? But you gotta say they maintain their roots. Right? What does that mean to maintain them? What do you mean by that?
To I guess not different repetitive, not distance themselves. So to make sure that they're always connected to their community, to make sure that they're not trying to say like not to denounce their heritage or where they came from in the first place, to make sure that they're always going back. Things like that.
Okay, so what's those things?
Staying connected.
Staying connected with that.
Like share the needs of that community afterwards.
I'm not gonna say share. Because, whatever, you can have it share if you want. I'm gonna say express. Emphasize. Those are the more operational words that I like to say. Operationalize the needs of the community.
Ryan, you said emphasize or empathize?
I say emphasize. Emphasize or express the needs of their agreed community. Right? Is that all?
From there, take like praxis and action. Like
What action? They could just jump into it.
attempt to solve the needs which have been
How?
expressed.
Revolutionary.
Coalition.
Oh, like it. Like it. I like both of those things. What did you say though?
Revolutionary action.
Oh, Lord. We called it counter-hegemonic discourse. I like that. I'm willing to even change it. You just added to new school debate. She said revolutionary what?
So would
She
that be
said revolutionary knowledge.
would that be somebody like Cornell West? Or no?
Could be.
Maybe?
I can argue that Cornell West is a force nigga too. Arguments, well, there's always going to be an argument, right? But it's a question of what you're talking about. Who you talking about? How you talking about? Right? You say Cornell West is a rebel to America. I say that he kissed America ass a little bit too much. Because he shows that's how his job. Feel me though? Okay? So you're right. We need to have revolutionary knowledge and discourse. It's got to fight fire with fire. It's just not enough to know about your people, but you need to be talking about your people. You need to be doing it for your people. Right? Any questions about that? I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Counter-hegemonic discourse. Revolutionary knowledge and discourse. Ma'am, your name?
Sunny.
Sunny? Got you. You will get credit for everything that you're I promise you till the day I die.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question. So, like, when you say coalition, do you mean coalition among community members, or like coalitions among from community members to like the politics side of it?
Okay. You need to build coalitions.
Oh, I was,
Right? But you need to also understand something. And since she brought it up, honey, she said revolution. Honey's revolution said something that there's many movements, but the same momentum. Right? So I need to know what other people are doing. We all are not fighting the same exact places. We need people in all different kind of walks. We need people up in office. We need people handing out flyers. We need people typing the flyers. We need people feeding the people. We need people just to get more people. Right? But as we got our movement, there's somebody else fighting for a different cause. We need to figure out how their cause interconnect with ours, how it is separate from ours, right? Because there's a difference between being an advocate versus being an activist. Let me break this down to y'all because debaters don't know this is either. Advocate something is to simply just believe, to support. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just means to support. Activism, hey, now means to do. Back again, right? It's not just to support something. It's to be that something. It's to do that something. Right, so my coalition members, I might be an advocate for some of their causes and an activist for mine and even some of their causes too.
Yeah.
It's exhausting work, but it's worth it. So do we understand what we mean by new school debate versus newer debate? That there's a clear distinction here. That this allows, or at least in my mind, for a little bit more argumentative, revolutionary flexibility. Whereas the three-tier methodology is traditionally, that's a bad word, is usually seen in more of a framework style view because you have to meet all three of these components in a very strict way. Question, is that not true for this?
So I guess I understand all three of the parts, but I'm having like a hard time imagining what that would look like as an affirmative case.
I did it for you when we started the lecture. I spoke from my social location about being a debater and seeing the problems that within this activity, right? From the mandatory clothes that we have to wear to the proclaiming our identities or our sexual identities, right? To an underplaying of other identities like gender and race, right? I gave you some scholarly work. Tim Wise speaks to the way in which people of color are often turned off from debate. I don't know how he did so as a white dude, but he showed you, right? He spoke to the ways in which students in debate, Gregory and Al Muhammad, showed you that students who want to participate in debate are more likely to when you provide them a way to engage the topic. And last but not least, in the moment of performance, which kind of caps this whole talk off, in the moment of performance, I became an organic intellectual right in front of your face. Because I was from the aggrieved community, you don't doubt that. I was speaking the needs of the community, you better not doubt that. been used as fuel against teams who try to do what I do by saying we already did it. So do I have credentials? Of course, I will argue that I have, but it's in the eye of the beholder. You tell me. Credential speaks to credit. Am I credible enough for you? Have I established my ethos for you? Maybe, maybe not. Not okay with that. I've used my available means of persuasion. Can you render judgment on it? Welcome to critical thinking. Welcome to alternative style debate. More importantly, welcome to performance. Really?
Oh, I do. Okay, so I can't argue with, but I see how this works in a world in which like the affirmative stands up and does like the performance, right? So, would you say that,
Okay, hold up. Break it down for you. The performance?
or does a performance, right? So like they perform in,
The, right? Performance, this is what you said, a performance. And if I believe you talked about it as a noun, I've been talking about performance
as a verb.
as a verb.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to make that clear for you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, next question.
Because my question is like really what does the negative do, or what does it look like when one performance meets another performance?
What does it look like?
Yeah, so like how does that really work?
It can look like a lot of things. You have to recognize that now, since we try to change the scope of what it means for the app to do something, right? It changes what it means to establish competition in the debate. Fundamentally. Those things are then all up to debate. Right? The applicant says who best performatively and methodologically brings debate home. The negative got options. They could say we agree with that. We performatively and methodologically bring debate back home better than you. They can be like, actually, this debate should not be about performatively and methodologically bringing people back home. It should be about performatively and methodologically bringing people to work. Or you can say I broke the rules. Or you can just impact her. Oh, bad. Performance is bad. You say performance is bad, I'm like, probably. What about mine though? Right? Specificity has been required. But what does it mean to be negative in this debate? So what if you stand up and just present your arguments, and then the negative just stands up and then present their argument? How do you decide? What do I know? It all has to be debated by the students. That's the difference between traditional style argumentation versus performance, is that we acknowledge the importance and the necessity of subjects, so everything is always called into question. Even existence. So it's not a thing that I can tell you in regards to a performance. But something that I do. And something that I can show you. Alright, so a lot of people know the NDT like final round and who's like performatively and methodologically bring debate back home and stuff like that. Everybody familiar? Who's not familiar? Well, good, because we're not gonna watch that debate. I don't like that debate. We're gonna watch the semifinal debate. Oh, yes, sir. Yes.
So I have a question. So if it's fair to critique traditional intellectuals because they don't necessarily have the same experiences as we do, or they don't necessarily come from a place where they can talk about different experiences. Is it fair that we critique organic intellectuals because their experiences would be different from across?
You criticize criticize them and say that the organic intellectuals don't really match up to the substance of the app, right? You can say that organic intellectuals don't match up to your experience, and that's what we should be caring about in this debate. You know, you say a lot of things. You can. It's just a question of how you would debate those out.
So we don't have more like what we were talking about in lab about how method can sometimes distract you from it.
Where you talking about, for instance, I think we did just talk about this a little bit, and I'll rephrase so I can be a little bit more clear about that. I told you about how literature methodology is somewhat stagnant, right? It's just like you didn't present a personal narrative. You did not speak from your social, well, not speak from your social location, but build coalitions, for instance, right? Those are my two quote-unquote link arguments. And then the affirmative's like, what are you talking about? Absolutely I did. The method that you have of the 3-tier allowed you to be blind to the fact that the 1AC did include all of those things. They were just not blocked out so rigidly for you. The 1AC was all about my personal experience. That rap was all about my personal experience. It was all about traditional intellectuals. Who else gonna speak on the debate besides me? Why can't I theorize about that? And like I said before, I became an organic intellectual in front of your face, so the method that you had distracted you from seeing the performance of the debate. You missed the moment because you worried on technique, on procedural, on the way that I do it instead of how I did it, which is slightly separate from the way, because it speaks to the moment of time.
When like performing the debate stage, when you consider like it building coalitions like among the other debaters in the group and the judge themselves and the other team that like maybe kind of hegemonic towards like you.
And you can create coalitions with them. But you also have the right not to. I've told several people I don't need you. More importantly, I don't want you.
In context of what you're talking about, like the specificity of the performance, this like also might be a little specific. Eli made an argument in like that final round, which was like Northwestern made education arguments, and he brought up that it's the final round of the year, and education, like how much more education do you need? Is that like sort of what you were talking about in context of you need to evaluate that debate as like specifically what is happening, where it's happening?
Absolutely, they forgot that this wasn't just a regular debate. It was the final debate. There was no going home and trying it again. This was my last debate of my life. Well, not the last debate, but the last competitive debate that I had of my life. You know what I'm saying? What do you mean? We need to facilitate more education. Yes, you not being aware of the space and the place in a particular moment in time that we had this discussion made your argument irrelevant and offensive. So, I'm gonna play this video, give y'all a little bit of background. This is the semifinals of the NDT round. I'm only gonna play the last speech so you can kind of see performance in action a little bit. What happened in this debate was we was debating the University of Oklahoma, Leonardi and Masterson. They made an argument about capitalism and how it is that we need to join the Communist Party. They said that the only way in which the affirmative could join the Communist Party was to surrender the ballots so that we could get our ID badges, right? And there will be a dictator of the proletariat, right? This is a performance debate now, right? Stay with me, you know. There will be a dictator of the proletariat that allows for us to talk about oppression, that dictates and that will kind of facilitate discussions about oppression, but we have to attend to the system of capital first because the use of identity and identity politics only fuels the system of capitalism. So we have to retreat from that and join the Communist Party. Understand? Our argument was to bring debate home. Two separate things. We said home, they said party. What happens? I'll show you the result.
Leonardi's mix on video. This is you that. I told you that. Shut up.
Why you telling me to shut up? I'm not on camera. That's trifling.
No, but I told you time in and time out that OULM was in the semifinals before last. This was last year.
You play it.
We talked about that like 4
Play it.
times. But you knew that already, though.
Light?
I have a question. Only one color.
Whoop. Yeah.
Ready?
Almost.
Everybody ready? We should be flowing.
Almost. Almost.
Oh, you can find it.
Ready?
I got this.
Mhm.
The role of the ballot in this debate is to vote for the team that best performatively and methodologically brings the debate home. The performative method of the 1AC is to use the whiz as a text to ease on down the road to show how we all experience shit, even capitalism, differently, which is why there can be no universal in the world of performativity, which is what our Johnson evidence says. It says that we need to speak to the materiality of performance and how it is the failure to ground our discussions of theory and the material realities of people, force them to lead the conversation, which sets up a very good uniqueness for all to take out their role as the ballot for us. I'll give you examples. One of which said they blame the worker for not only not speaking the language of communism, which is why the work is only a product of racialized heteronormative classes and different etc. forms of violence which they don't come to grip with, which is why as we are always shut out your conversation in a world of negative balance, I will not be able to continue my search for a home place because they impact turn our particularity arguments, which is why my analysis of being able to talk about how crack being sold out of my dining room window wasn't an example of how it is. I understand how class affected our relationship. It made us to where we had to do things that was against the system in order to survive, which is a good reason as to why it is that we need to understand the perspective of those who experience this form of violence in a very different, in a multiplicity of ways to truly strive for a notion of home. That is the conceded Lynchburg evidence that indicates that we should be concerned about each other's struggles. The fact that you don't care about anybody who can't divorce themselves from their ideologies is problematic. This highlights our second portion of the uniqueness arguments. Their arguments that we can just forget about history. I think that Elijah was very damn good in the 1AR telling you why, as a black queer body inside of this particular space, I cannot forget my history. I cannot forget the fact of me being forced out of the closet in my home, but then being able to force back into the closet because I'm not supposed to articulate my queerness before class instead of articulating those things at the same damn time in a particular moment because we perform in particular spaces, which means our identity marks our bodies in certain particular ways in different contexts, which is why this their method is a form of distancing. Flag this as the third uniqueness argument. It's always the fault of some institution. It's always the fault of capitalism. It's always the fault of some external system out there, which is why this is, they can be the fucking microphone for us and justify things like factory farms and big businesses because it's never our complicities within capitalism that we need to understand, but rather we provide you the only mechanism to alleviate this. Our arguments about disidentification allows you to embrace the etc. I am all of these things in a singular moment, and for them to prioritize one of them like class eliminates my fight for survival. That's conceded. Johnson evidence. Do not try to take my beat up Nikes because they get me down the road. This is a turn to your roles about our second piece of Ross evidence indicates that you are able to then lead the movement. You say the dictator of the proletariat, but you said that some people are not going to be able to join the movement, which is her uniqueness arguments, all the black power bodies that we were talking about, which means that we can never have anybody who can truly represent our particular needs because they attempt to fill those needs in instead of understanding the perspective of those who exist on the particular bottom. You say home as a metaphor is bad for practice, but it assumes that home is a metaphor. You have not answered the 1AC piece of weird evidence that says that we should be reclaiming a positive political meaning of home that allows for us to raise serious questions about how is it that I'm affected by capitalism, race, heteronormativity, Christianity, and all other isms that go unnamed. This is ultimately why, even if they win some backlash, arguments. I don't give a damn if I get mad. I still am going to be Tina and speak up about my particular oppression inside of this space because it gives me fucking life. It gives me the ability to continue in these conversations, which is why we need to preserve an idea of hope for those individuals. Even if we don't reach some glorious haven of what we think is home, that just general quest to preserve that ideal of home is what is important to those black and queer bodies, and the ability to deny them their right is what our Johnson evidence indicates, that you can slice up our identities and eliminate our existence and justify our activism for our particular bodies, which means that you have made me become your sacrifice for your balance in this particular debate, because that's the only way in which I can join your party. Our gross evidence indicates that we are having a party of our own that allows motherfuckers to dance and do the twirl because they can be free inside of their particular methodologies, which is why wholeness is important for us. You extend your impact on capitalism that allows for violence. Hello, no application to the debate space, which is what the 1AC is about. Allowing Elijah and I to unite the crowd from the people's champion allows us to bridge the gap between people who experience different forms of oppression because they may be interracial, or they may be asexual, or they may just be transgendered in this particular space. You say that all the people will die if we don't do shit about capitalism, but this assumes a world of non-identification, in a world in which we can work on and against our systems of oppression. Then that allows for us to reclaim a sense of identity. You say we can't be a part of your party, but this, you say that we can be a part of your party, but in the next breath, impact turns on particularity arguments, which proves why you are turned to your own politics, because you elevate politics above the body as if it's outside the body, which is answered all by our Johnson evidence that said performance is the theory of the flesh. That's why our role of the ballot is performative and methodologically brings debate back home, not performatively. Then methodologically, it's about the theory of performance through the flesh that allows for us to get our 1AC impact. You say we don't get out the link because of universalism. You have not answered the question of how it is that we know that we are uniting with some individuals if we don't have that discussion with them. And it's also answered by the raw evidence that says that it allows for you to then can take control of the movement, which means that we never ever get back home. What about us? Your practice fails to include these black bar individuals. The word bar doesn't even come out of their mouth. How do I get to the fucking party? Any questions, comments about that? I thought that pretty much everything that I tried to explain to you all in this lecture came up in that speech about how you use performance. That's a good question. That's a good question. Next. Performance anymore? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have a question specifically about the argument where you said that they said that you can join the party, but you made the argument that that means that they're putting politics above the body. Is that saying like?
Right. They said that we need to understand the structure or systems of capital that exist out there.
So
Our
because,
sorry.
wait, so because they force you to understand like communism or like force yourself into that party, they are putting the politics above.
No, they don't force us into the party. The party part is kind of irrelevant to that argument. The argument there is that you try to say that there's this structure that exists outside of human agency that creates oppression, which means that you get to say, oh, it's not me. Our argument is that it is you. It is the bodies that make capitalism come to be. It's their mentality, it's their actions, it's their behaviors, their performance that makes capitalism come to be. And you to focus on structure instead of the theory of the flesh is ultimately that form of violence. That's how violence happens. We said that is the starting point for violence to create when you can locate it outside of yourself.
You made a distancing argument. Could you explain that? In this.
I think that is the distancing.
Like that old scary guy.
Right. And so we've had a very theoretical yet I hope performative discussion about how performance happens, the etymology of performance as it relates to debate, and you also had to see it, you got to see it in practice, not just some bullshit ass 1AC, but how it carries itself into the 2AR in the debate.
In that distancing argument, with your speaking from your social position, was that the argument, the part where you were talking about how you're selling something?
Yeah, I did talk about that in the debate. I talked about that in cross-examination.
So that would be that's where you came from?
Right, that happened in cross-examination, but there was also a part of the 1AC where I talked about being in a cafeteria full of students or whatever, and they didn't recognize that as an anti-capitalist rhetoric. And our argument was that it is. It's UDL students come to debate suburban kids, right? We do have a class-based analysis. It's not the one you wanted, but it's
best way to engage individuals who embrace a performative model? Because I know some of the students have this question but don't seem to be asking someone, who can give them good advice. So somebody does what, you all did. How do they respond to that without saying framework or something along those lines, similar, along those lines?
Right. You could say that the 1AC, you should not say that the 1AC should happen. Rather, you should use the fact that the 1AC happened as a way for you to start to make arguments. Right? In the world of performance, it's not a question of if the United States does X, Y, and Z then, right? It's a question of the 1AC already happened. It already been done. So what then does that performance do? You should not be locating at that particular moment in time what would happen if the 1AC was done, because it did. You should be talking about how the 1AC worked to produce more forms of exclusion, to produce another impact that you can now debate with them, right? You don't have to perform against them in that sense, you know what I'm saying? You obviously need to be performing, we talked about that earlier, but you don't have to do that. You don't have to I gotta play a song because they played a song, right? That's not necessarily the case, right? You need to engage what is their performance for its merit. Like I said earlier, it's like we could say who best performatively and methodologically bring debate back home. You could say that the 1AC's performance of bringing debate back home is exactly that. It takes it back home and allows it to just sit on its hands. It does nothing. Rather, we should performatively and methodologically be putting debate to work. We should be making it move. We should be coming and getting dirty. You shouldn't always be safe in a